Leaving was the hardest thing I had ever done. I couldn't understand why, after everything, I still found myself looking over my shoulder at the life I was leaving behind. But that night, I packed my bags and left Alejandro's house, left Marco, and walked away from a love I wasn't sure was real anymore. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have any answers. All I knew was that the weight of betrayal, my own and theirs, had become too much to bear. For the first time in months, I felt free. But that feeling didn't last long. I spent the next few weeks in a small, run-down apartment downtown. I told myself it was a temporary escape, a place to clear my mind. But even there, I couldn't escape the noise, the whispers that followed me, the stories people were spreading. Alejandro had made sure that everyone knew about our affair. He'd turned my life into a spectacle, and even now the rumors were still circulating. He had exposed every part of me, laid me bare for the world to see. But I couldn't shake the thought of Marco. I tried to ignore it. I tried to drown it out with work and friends, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, his soft smile, his hands that held me when no one else would. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that we were something real, but the doubts lingered. Gabriela's words echoed in my mind. Marco had been with her before. Could I trust him? Then one day, as I walked into a coffee shop, I froze. There he was, Marco, sitting at a corner table, his head down, but there was no mistaking him. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, I thought about walking away, running in the opposite direction. But something held me there, something deeper than fear or guilt. I walked over to his table, and he looked up at me. His eyes were filled with pain, regret, and desperation. "Sophia," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I'm so sorry." I couldn't speak at first. My throat was tight with emotion, and my mind was a blur. Finally, I managed to find my voice. "Why, Marco? Why did you lie to me? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Marco reached out, his hand trembling. "Because I was scared. I didn't want to lose you, Sophia. I thought if you knew the truth, you'd leave me. But I swear, what I feel for you, it's real. I never used you." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to throw myself into his arms and let everything else fall away. But I couldn't. I couldn't just forget the mess I had found myself in. "You don't know what you're asking," I said, my voice breaking. "You've made me choose between you and my own life, Marco, and now I don't know if I can ever trust you again." He stared at me, the pain in his eyes almost unbearable. "Please, Sophia, let me prove it to you. Give me one chance." Marco wasn't the only one who wanted me back. Alejandro had made his move too. One night, I received an unexpected visitor at my apartment. I opened the door, and there stood Alejandro, wearing that same icy expression I had come to know so well. "Sophia," he said, his voice surprisingly calm, "we need to talk." I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear the lies, the manipulation, the twisted promises of reconciliation. But I was too curious to send him away. "What do you want?" I asked, barely holding back the bitterness in my voice. "I want you back," Alejandro said simply. "I've realized something. Without you, my life is meaningless. You belong with me, Sophia." I felt a rush of anger, but something else too. Was it guilt? Regret? Had I made a mistake leaving him? He continued, "I'll make it right. You'll never have to worry about Marco or any of this. Just come back to me." I couldn't believe it. Was Alejandro trying to win me back? Or was this another game to him? But something in his eyes told me this was not the same man I had married. The power he once held was slipping away. He was desperate. I felt my resolve waver for a second, but I knew better than to let him manipulate me again. "Even if you mean it, Alejandro, I can't trust you," I said, my voice steady. "You ruined everything, and I won't let you do that to me again." I closed the door before he could say anything else. Just when I thought I had made my decision, life threw me another curveball. The next day, I received a call from a private investigator. "Miss Sophia, I have information you need to see," the voice on the other end said. "What information?" I asked, my stomach churning. "I've been hired by a client to dig into the details of your husband's financial dealings. And what I found, it's not pretty." My mind raced as the investigator began to outline what he had uncovered. Alejandro had been involved in illegal business transactions, using his company as a front for money laundering. "You need to be careful, Miss Sophia," the investigator warned. "This is bigger than you think. Your husband is in deep, and if you're not careful, you could be dragged into it. My head spun. Alejandro's world of power and influence wasn't just about status. It was built on lies and corruption. But then, the investigator dropped a bombshell. I'm not the only one who knows about your husband's activities. Your brother-in-law, Marco, he's been getting too close to the truth, and I'm afraid things could get dangerous if he keeps pushing. I was caught between two impossible choices. Marco, the man I love with every inch of my soul, was in danger because of his involvement with me. And Alejandro, despite everything, was still a man with power that could destroy us all. But I wasn't the same woman who had walked into this mess months ago. I wasn't going to let anyone control my life, not anymore. I called Marco and told him everything. We need to get away, I told him, my voice urgent. Alejandro's involved in something dangerous, and if we don't leave now, we could be in serious trouble. Marco agreed without hesitation. It was time to take control of our own fate, and whatever happened next, we would face it together. As we packed our things and prepared to leave, I knew one thing for sure. Our lives were about to change forever. But would we survive what was coming? Could we escape the grip of Alejandro's power and the shadows of the lies that had torn us apart? I didn't know, but I knew I had to fight. We couldn't stay. Not for one more minute. Alejandro was coming for us. Of that, I was sure. The walls of my small apartment, which had once felt like a sanctuary, were closing in around me. Marco and I had packed what little we could carry, but even as we fled, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running straight into something worse. I don't know if we can do this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper as we climbed into the back of Marco's car. Alejandro, he won't stop. Marco gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles wide. We have to try, Sophia. We don't have a choice anymore. As we sped through the streets, the weight of what we were doing pressed on me. We weren't just running away from Alejandro. We were running away from everything, our lives, our families, the past we had built. And yet, as I looked at Marco beside me, my heart knew one thing. This was where I belonged. We didn't have a plan, just a sense of urgency. Marco drove, and we didn't stop until we reached a small coastal town hours away from the chaos we had left behind. It was a quiet, sleepy place where no one knew us, and that was exactly what we needed. We rented a tiny apartment in a rundown building by the beach, far from the city. For the first time in a long time, I let myself breathe. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore became a calming lullaby, but the unease in my chest wouldn't fade. We're safe for now, Marco said, his voice tired, but relieved. Alejandro doesn't know where we are. But I wasn't convinced. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were just waiting for the inevitable. It wasn't long before the first message came. I was sitting on the balcony of our apartment, staring at the endless horizon, when my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I didn't recognize the area code, but something told me it was important. I hesitated, then picked up. Sophia, it's Gabriella. Her voice was cold, almost detached. You think you can just disappear and everything will be fine? I froze. What do you want, Gabriella? She laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. I think you should know something, Sophia. Alejandro isn't done with you. He never was. What do you mean? I asked, feeling my heart race. You think you're safe? You think running away will solve anything? Alejandro's got a plan, Sophia. He's been covering his tracks and he's coming for you, coming for both of you. But there's something else I know. I felt a chill run down my spine. What else? He's not the only one who's been keeping secrets. You, Marco, and even me. We're all tangled in something much darker than you think. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I couldn't breathe. Gabriella's words echoed in my mind. Alejandro wasn't just angry anymore. He was playing a dangerous game, and now Marco and I were trapped in it. That evening, I confronted Marco. What did Gabriella mean? I asked, my voice trembling. What secrets is she talking about? Marco's face went pale, and I could see the guilt in his eyes. I don't know. I swear I've never lied to you, Sophia. I've been trying to protect you. Protect me from what, Marco? What are you not telling me? He stood up and walked to the window, looking out into the night. There's something I should have told you a long time ago, before we got involved, before all of this. I walked over to him, my heart racing. What is it? Marco turned to me, his eyes full of regret. Alejandro and I, we weren't always enemies. We were partners in business, and it wasn't straightforward. We both got involved in things we shouldn't have, things that could hurt us. My mind struggled to process his words. So you and Alejandro were partners in something illegal? Yes, he said softly. But I tried to get out. I had to, Sophia. That's why I ended up with you. You were my way out. But Alejandro, he's always been one step ahead of me, and now, with you involved, things are spiraling. I felt betrayed all over again. Marco wasn't just the love of my life. He was the man who had been complicit in everything Alejandro had done. Days passed, and the weight of Marco's confession settled in. It became clear that the escape we had so desperately wanted was an illusion. Alejandro wasn't going to let us go. His influence was suffocating, and I had no idea how far he would go to keep his past from coming to light. The phone rang again, this time from an unknown number. My pulse quickened as I picked it up. Sophia, a man's voice said, cold and demanding. We have Marco. If you want to see him safe, you'll do exactly what I say. I froze. What have you done to him? Come to the warehouse by the docks, alone. If you bring anyone, you won't see him again. If you tell anyone, it'll be the same. The line went dead. I turned to Marco, panic rising in my chest. They have you, I whispered, barely able to speak. What do I do? Marco's face was pale, his lips trembling. You have to go, Sophia. You have to save yourself. Don't come after me. It's too dangerous. I won't leave you, I said, my voice firm, though my heart was breaking. I love you, Marco. I'm not walking away now. I knew this was it. If I went to the warehouse, I might never come back. But I couldn't leave Marco in the hands of Alejandro's men. I drove to the docks, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, the salty air mixed with the tension in my chest. As I approached the warehouse, I saw the shadow of a figure standing by the door. It was too dark to make out details, but I knew who it was. The moment I stepped out of the car, the figure moved forward. Stay right there, Sophia, a voice commanded. We have Marco. He's fine, for now. But if you try anything, he won't be... I didn't hesitate. I walked toward the door, every step heavy with fear. When I entered, the first thing I saw was Marco, sitting in a chair, looking worn but alive. You're too late. Alejandro's voice rang out from the shadows. You should have left when you had the chance. I stood still, my heart pounding. This ends tonight, Alejandro. You can't control us anymore. Alejandro stepped forward, his smile cold but calm. You think you can escape me? You're nothing without me, Sophia. The air was thick with tension. The final confrontation had begun. The warehouses smelled of rust, salt, and death. Marco was tied to a chair, his face bloodied, but defiant. Alejandro, my husband, my nightmare, stood before me, his gun aimed at the man I truly loved. You should have never betrayed me, Sophia, Alejandro said, his voice like ice. You and Marco, two wordless traitors. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling. You lost me long before Marco, Alejandro. You never loved me. You just wanted control. Alejandro's lips curled into a cruel smile. And what do you think love is? Love is power. Love is possession. I took a slow step forward, my heart pounding. Love is freedom, and you will never control me again. He laughed, shaking his head. You're not leaving here, Sophia. Neither of you are. The gun cocked. Time froze. And then, a shot rang out. For a second, I thought Alejandro had shot Marco. My body tensed, ready to scream. But then, Alejandro staggered. A dark red stain spread across his chest. His eyes widened in shock, his grip on the gun weakening. He turned slightly, confusion flickering across his face. I followed his gaze. Gabriela. She stood in the doorway, a gun still smoking in her hand, her face calm, almost indifferent. You talk too much, Alejandro, she said, stepping forward. That was always your problem. Alejandro's mouth opened as if to say something, but no words came. He fell to his knees, then onto his side, his body motionless. It was over. I let out a shaky breath, my legs nearly giving out beneath me. Marco groaned from the chair, struggling against the ropes. I rushed to him, my hands shaking as I untied him. Sophia. His voice was weak, but he was alive. He was alive. I turned to Gabriela, my eyes burning with questions. She simply tucked the gun into her coat and sighed. You should leave. Now. Why did you help us? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She gave me a knowing look. Because Alejandro thought he was untouchable, and no man should ever believe that. Her words lingered as Marco and I stumbled out of the warehouse, leaving behind the past, the pain, and the man who had tried to destroy us. A week later, Marco and I sat by the ocean in a small coastal town far from everything we had known. The waves crashed gently against the shore, a stark contrast to the storm we had just survived. He reached for my hand, squeezing it. "We made it," he said softly. I exhaled, feeling the weight of everything settle on my shoulders. Did we? Alejandro was gone, but the scars remained. The choices we made had consequences, ones we would carry forever. "Do you regret it?" Marco asked. I turned to him, searching his eyes, the same eyes that had held me together when I was breaking. I shook my head. Number. I regret staying with Alejandro for so long. I regret not seeing the truth earlier. But us? Number? Never. He smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Then that's all that matters. We sat there, the wind tangling through our fingers, our hearts still beating despite everything we had endured. And for the first time in a long time I felt something I had thought was lost forever. Peace. Love is a choice. But so is betrayal. I thought love was something that just happened, something we fell into. But I learned that love is also something we fight for. I had loved a man who never really loved me back, and in the end, I had to make a choice. Stay in the prison he built for me, or risk everything for something real. I chose love. I chose freedom. But freedom comes with a price. And in the end, the biggest betrayal wasn't Alejandro's. It was mine, betraying the life I thought I wanted for the one I truly deserved. Because love should never be about possession. It should be about liberation. And sometimes, to be free, you have to be willing to burn everything to the ground.